Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I'm very excited to have with me Ray Martin, and let me tell you a little bit about him. He is sometimes called the Daily Explorer. He's an entrepreneur and award-winning business leader. As a coach, mentor, facilitator, speaker, writer, and mindfulness teacher, he is a torchbearer for greater human consciousness. Ray also is a marathon runner and a fundraiser. He's on a mission to empower people to live authentically and to bring more joy and happiness into the world. So today we're going to talk about leading yourself, leading others. Please welcome Ray Martin. Ray, I'm so excited. You know, this is the topic I love to talk about.
Great. Thank you for such a lovely introduction too.
You're very welcome. We always start with an easy question, Ray, and that is just to tell everybody, where do you call home? Where do you live?
Well, I live in the UK and in a place called Glastonbury, which is known internationally, even though it's tiny, because every year there's this huge music festival that gets broadcast on the television around the world.
Oh, cool.
And, sort of put Glastonbury on the map. So anyone who's really into music would have heard of Glastonbury, I'm pretty sure.
And how many people does that bring into your small town?
Oh, hundreds of thousands. I don't know the exact number, but a lot. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So I always like to get sort of more, you know, the bio talks about generally what you've done from a business professional way, but I'd like to understand a little bit more about this epic journey that you have taken, and really, you know, what was it like to go from that young man to where you are today?
Well, thanks for saying that. I wasn't actually so young when I left. I was 45 when that journey started. And so, I mean, briefly...
As a 60-year-old woman, 45 is good.
Yeah. Although I will be 64 on my next birthday, so the maths doesn't work. But what happened to me was I'd sort of pursued my career and life path, I think, in a fairly conventional way, like most people I knew who'd left school and followed the blueprint. So I got married, was trying to create a successful career, got a home, was wanting to start a family and all those things. And my wife was actually my business partner. We created a business together. And for 10 years, we ran a really successful management consulting business. And I was even given the Daily Telegraph Business Leader of the Year award in 2002 for doing a really brilliant job at that type of thing. Then one day, suddenly, my wife came back from a meeting and said, "I'm leaving you and I'm leaving the company." It was completely shocking when it happened. Wow. It was many years ago now, 2003 it was. And that changed everything. My father got very ill at the same time and he died shortly after that event. And it left me wondering whether or not the way I defined being successful up to that point was a way I wanted to stick with, or whether I had needed some new thinking on what the whole nature of being successful meant. Because I'd followed the material version of success and I was deeply unhappy and my life was kind of broken. And so I was encouraged by friends to take a 6-month sabbatical, which I thought was a brilliant idea.
Yeah.
So I minimalized my life, closed everything down and decided to take a 6-month sabbatical And at the end of that 6-month period, just as it was coming to an end, I did a 10-day meditation retreat in a Buddhist monastery in Thailand. And it changed everything in my mind. It just completely and utterly put me on a different place. And I thought at that moment, I'm not ready to go back. I need to do a bit more of this learning and reflection. And then one thing led to another. And that's why I ended up having to write a book, because I ended up living out of my backpack for 14 years before I came back to the UK. And so many people who I met asked me the story and what had happened. And they said, if you're ever going to write a book about this, would you send me an email to let me know? Because I'd really like to read it. And I laughed, of course. I never left in any way, shape, or form to write a book. I wasn't even an author. So, but I decided to write a book because I've been asked so many times, and I got the message from the universe that I needed to write this book, and it got published about a year and a half ago. So
very cool.
Yeah,
and it's interesting how we don't think of ourselves as a writer, an author, but we all have stories. We all have. Our journey is interesting, not only to ourselves as we lived it, but it really is interesting to others. That's kind of why I started the podcast, because I wanted to give a platform for people to share their stories. But yeah, everybody's an author. You just have to sit down and write it.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is so true. That's one of the reasons I love listening to podcasts, is because it's not that someone's going to say something you go, oh, I'd never heard of that or never thought of that. But it's the fact they're describing an experience that you can relate to in their own words. There's something very powerful about one person's version of the story. Because when I was writing my book, I looked at the work of Joseph Campbell and how he described the arc of the storyline in every story, the hero's journey, as he describes it.
Yeah.
And everyone's got a story that follows that arc, but the content and context for every individual story is so different.
Yeah.
And when you hear someone saying just even a personal experience that, a difficult challenge they overcame, it's lovely to listen, isn't it? Because you hear them, how they overcome it, how it felt, and you go, oh, I felt like that too.
That's exactly right.
It just creates so much resonance for us and gives us permission to be braver, I think.
Yeah. And also, in the reflective time, I think if you really get involved with writing, speaking, as a speaker too, this is a message for them as well, as as I teach coaching of that. But when you write your story, write your speech, your pitch, or whatever, you should always keep in mind that the audience needs to see themselves. They need to see and feel that pain is their pain, that problem is their problem. And then you weave them in how you the solution to it, the journey. And I think it brings hope a lot of times when people see, okay, you got through this, maybe I can too.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I had a couple of thoughts while you were saying that. I mean, one of the things is, and this is really hard to say to someone who's really in the middle of a grieving period where their life has fallen apart. So I'm not saying that I would say this to someone at that moment, but I found from my own journey that there are so many gifts in the things that happen, and particularly the adverse events, the most challenging events seem to bear the most powerful changes in my own life. And so when I look back on them now, because sometimes when I tell the story I've just shared with you, people say, oh, that must have been tough. Well, it was at the time, but I've had a completely different, and I could arguably say much more fulfilling life because of it than I might have done if I'd stayed in that life.
And I think really what you're saying there is that those trials, those bumps in your journey really help to mold you to who you are today.
Yes.
And I think that's important. Sometimes people think people that have had success just had an easy ride. In most cases, that isn't how it was.
Oh, I wish it was that easy.
I know. So we have, I chose the title, Leading Yourself and Leading Others. And the whole point of my podcast is to give a platform for people to share,
Yeah.
connect people together with how to be more confident as leaders. And again, I think people sometimes think, well, I'm just going to work on me, but everybody is watching you.
Mm.
And everything that you do is informing, is really teaching other people. They're always watching. So talk to me about your perspective of leading yourself and leading others.
Well, I think it's something we all kind of intuitively know, but it's great when it's kind of really made clear. When I think about who I've experienced being around who are really great leaders, they've all got some things in common, and they're very subtle things that you're going to go, when someone points them out, you go, oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. So for example, the best leaders have a really compelling purpose. That, if you said, why are you doing all of this? They would tell you, and it would really excite you to hear it. And it would even make you probably feel like you want to be part of it in most cases. And the best leaders have a set of values, a way of being, a way of showing up that means they behave in a way that's congruent with those values and that things that are really important to them. My own core values are things like freedom, love, exploration, integrity. I find it very hard to go into any situation these days without honoring those values and doing the right thing and showing up with love and kindness and compassion and those sorts of things. They're really important to me. My definition of success in the old days might have been how much I'd earned, but it's moved a long way on the dial these days to, can I go to bed at night knowing that I lived my values and I was true to myself that day and I didn't compromise those values? That's much more important measure of success for me. And I could go on and on and on, but the most important thing is someone who's reflected deeply on who they are, knowing what their values are, what their vision is, what their purpose is, what empowering beliefs they hold that really propel them forward, and what limiting beliefs they hold that hold them back. And someone who knows when they're in their element, which is how the lovely Sir Ken Robinson described it when he said, you've got these things you're really good at and these things you really care about. And when they intersect, that's when you're in your element. It's when life becomes timeless. You're totally absorbed in what you're doing. You could do it forever. I often say that when I'm working with a client coaching. I sometimes say, I could really happily do this even if I wasn't paid to do it. I love this.
That's so funny. When I started podcasting, and I truly love doing this, and it wasn't ever on my radar at all. But I had someone say, well, how much money do you make at that? And I thought, it's one of those MasterCard moments, it's like
Yes.
the conversations that I have so often are priceless. And, I do make money, but it's still, when I started this, it wasn't for the purpose of me.
No.
It was for the purpose of my audience. And as, I've got all these podcasts now finished, it really is still for the audience. How can I connect you with someone that will solve an issue or problem or inspire you to be greater than you are today?
Yeah. And what you're talking about there is what I've referred to in my book and in my work as an act of service, because there's so much power in 100% choosing to go into service. I remember when I was floundering around at home after my marriage was sort of breaking up and my father had died, and I was on the floor most days thinking, life's over. Listen, I'm never going to be happy again. And a really, really good friend of mine came and sat with me and said, do you know what I think might work for you? I said, no, tell me. And they said, well, when you're in a situation such as the one you're in and you can't see a way out and you think it's bleak and you just can see no way forward, that's a time when you might consider just going 100% to do an act of service for someone else for a while.
Absolutely.
And so he said, find someone in your life somewhere who really needs your help and go and 100% help them and be with them and forget about yourself. And so I did. I did. It took me a while, but I found out that one of my really good friends who'd left the UK to live in Australia with her husband, had breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And I contacted her and I said, I'd like to, if it's okay with you, I heard about this and I'd like to come over to Australia for a month and just look after you and take care of anything that you need. She said, yeah, that would be absolutely brilliant. She just had a young son, born a couple of years ago before. Her husband worked full time and I knew she needed help with the treatments and stuff. So I did that. I went to see her. And after I finished all of that, I sort of thought, where's the university's instruction? I've done this active service. What's next? And nothing really much changed in that moment. Mm-hmm. But about a couple of weeks later, I went to another part of Australia and met another friend because I was over there, and we went to see a play in the theatre. Her, me, and her mum. And I saw in the program that they were auditioning for the next play that was coming on at the theatre. And I said to my two friends, just for a laugh, I said, it was about an English member of parliament. So I said, I should be in that play. I've got an English
You've
accent.
Got the accent.
I've got the right accent. I wasn't an actor. I was just kidding. I was joshing, really. But they said, well, we actually know the director is casting for that play. Why don't you go to the audition? I thought it was a nonsensical idea, but I agreed. I said, okay, I'll go along. But I can't imagine I get picked. I ended up being offered the lead role in the play for the whole run, much to my absolute, I could believe it when it happened. And I did the play. And I stayed in Australia, and it literally changed my life and my complete trajectory. That was the thing I think it caused me, a doorway opened. Mm-hmm. And when I came back to England after doing that play is when I said, right, I'm no longer I'm going to be a CEO. I'm going to quit doing that. And I sold my house in London and then started living nomadically, and, changed everything for me.
And I think what you're really saying there too is that when that opportunity came, rather than sitting back and saying, thinking of all the reasons why you shouldn't do it, why you couldn't do it, all the bad things that could happen and what people would think, you just did it. You just said
I didn't
yes.
Actually. Not true, Vicki. What I did was I knew I was being invited to something special to do the play. It was more than just being an actor in a play. It was so life-changing. I knew there was something divine in the intervention, how it felt to me. But I still was cautious. And so I thought to myself, I deeply, deeply reflected on it. And I came up with this concept of what I call confirmation signals, because I had been a pilot in my life. I've flown airplanes. And when you're navigating in an airplane cockpit and you set your heading towards a navigation beacon, the needle in the cockpit starts pointing towards that beacon, and that's how you know the direction to fly. But you've got to be 100% certain you've picked the right beacon, otherwise you're going in the wrong direction. And so you get a secondary in your ear. If you press the button, you get an audio confirmation signal. It's a Morse code signal. It goes like, and that signal is unique to that beacon. So if you don't hear the signal that's unique to that beacon, you know you've picked the wrong one. So that's a confirmation signal. So I applied that to my situation with the play. And I said to myself, what would be a confirmation signal for me that if I choose to go and do this play, it's the right choice I'm making? And I sat and thought about that, because I'd while I was in Australia auditioning, because I had to fly home before I knew I was in the play, I'd had to say to 3 or 4 clients I was working with, I need to postpone my work with you, potentially. Something's come up. I'll let you know. So I thought a confirmation signal would be that I'd call all 4 of those people and tell them really what had happened with the audition of the play, and ask them if they'd give me their blessing to go and let me postpone. And if any one of them didn't want me to do that, I'd stay. But if all 4 of them gave me their blessing, I'd go. And all 4 of them did. And I knew that was the right thing then.
So good. Excellent advice.
Yeah. So confirmation signals always work. If you can look for them, find them, set one, and then use it to know somehow.
So that kind of goes on with my next question. As we go through our journey, and we have life changes, and you have to you commit to that path. How do you know that that's the true and authentic? beyond the, now you've got that confirmation you're doing this, but is there always that thing in the back in your mind, like, is this the right way? Am I truly following my authentic and true life?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one that I've sort of like mulled over for years. But at the moment, my view of that question is that it's the act of having an expectation that's the problem, not if it's actually externally the right thing or not. Because I've learned a way of being completely unattached to the outcome of a choice that I've made, so that if it goes this way, that's okay. If it goes this way, that's okay. And if it goes this way, that's also okay. So I really don't mind which way it turns out, because I've made it okay in my thinking. And I think that's what happened in my earlier life, as I'd set a goal and say, well, I have to achieve this particular exact thing is what's going to make me happy if I achieve it. And so if I don't achieve it, the happiness isn't coming. The happiness is a reward for achieving the thing. And I felt, now I look back at that, that was not the best kind of thinking to have.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah, and so that's why I changed that.
My anti-aging and wellness business that I have, its founder is Jeff Olson, and he is also the founder of Happy Inc. And he always talks about the fact that that people get it backwards. People think that they have to achieve success and they have to achieve lots of money and all those things to be happy.
Yes.
But if you just work on being happy, all those things, just come to you.
Yeah.
And so what is, I think where you were talking is really live in the present. Don't worry about the past. Don't worry about the future, but live in the present and take the gifts that are given to you as you walk along that way. What impact does it have on you and those around you when you choose to live in the present? Because we've been talking all about you and your experience, but you had those friends, those coworkers, play actress and actors. What impact did you have on those people as they saw you living the present? And because that you were leading your life, and what impact it has on others?
Well, that's a great question. I can give you an answer, but I'm not sure if you asked anyone who knew me whether they'd say the same thing. So I don't know if it would represent their views. But what I found was that the more and more I had the practice of living in the present moment and just allowing life to flow me in the right direction, the more I found that people were interested in deeply connecting with me about that, because it was my way of leading by example, I suppose, because I hold the view that we only have one life, and
that's right.
And our work is to find the truest path in our life that we can find and walk that path, unashamedly, and be us authentically. And this was confirmed to me by the work of a lady in Australia called Bronnie Ware, who wrote a lovely book called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And in that book, she said that the number one regret that everyone has on their deathbed, and she's spoken to over 1,000 people on their deathbed, they all wish they'd lived their life true to themselves and not the life that others expected of them. And so I thought, what would the impact be if I could find and live that life for myself, which has become my quest for that trip.
Wow.
And then I started interacting with people to ask them if they were doing the same. And I found that there was a huge, huge interest from people in doing that. That's why I work as a leadership coach and mentor now. I coach lots and lots of people all the time, and particularly people in organizations who lead others, to really serve and show them how that they can bring their best self to their life and to their leadership. And it starts with them leading themselves, which is how we come full circle to the beginning of this talk we're having.
Yeah.
But that's and so I think that the impact it's had living in the present moment is it's just created so many brilliant conversations in my life with all these different people in all walks of life. And I feel like the experiences I have been able to have rippled out into those lives. And they are constantly rippling out into more lives that go beyond even people I know. And that makes me feel really happy that there's a kind of consciousness rippling out.
So good.
Yeah.
Whenever you talk about this, it's really, I do hear that you're talking about living in that state of self-acceptance.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that also holds people back. You know, there's all kinds of self-sabotage and not worth it and people pleasing. And, you know, I, for a long time, was a big time people pleaser. And it's one thing to reach out and be of service to others, but if you're the person that can't make a move without wondering how that other person might react to it, I think that's where people get stuck oftentimes. They're worrying about pleasing others. So talk to us about this state of greater self-acceptance.
Yeah.
Acceptance, I'm sorry.
This is something specifically that I wrote about in the book because I found in my first few months being out of my normal life and out of my normal routines was psychologically extremely scary and challenging. So I set these 10 guiding principles for myself, and self-acceptance was the first one. That I wouldn't be hard on myself, that I would give myself permission to experiment and try things out and stuff like that, and fail and all of those things. And I think as well, it is one of the hardest things because I am not an advocate for saying it's this or that. So it's be a pleaser or be a complete abrasive, rude, aggressive, annoying person. It's not either or. So the Buddhists always talk about the middle road, the middle way.
That's right. Read the room.
and I would say, there's something wonderful and graceful about going to a person saying that what you're saying or asking of me is causing some difficulty for me. I'm saying this because I want to be kind and loving in how I respond to you, but I also want to honor my own needs. And I'm trying to find a balance in this conversation between taking care of what I need to do and also being as useful and valuable to you as I can be. And I'm struggling with that at the moment. So is it okay if I can just talk through that with you? So it can be done in a sort of open, vulnerable way. It doesn't have to be done as a fight.
Yeah.
That's where I kind of direct the people I work with, or suggest they start to explore those ways of framing things so that their needs are honored, as well as taking care of the other without it being too pleasy,
So we're running out of time, but I'd love for you to touch on a couple of the other guiding principles that you have.
Yeah, one was non-attachment. I touched on this earlier, not being attached to any outcomes. Another was minimalism. I felt like I deprogrammed myself from years of being a consumer, just buying stuff literally every day, every week, stuff I didn't really need, because when I came to minimalize my life, I had box loads and box loads of things that I never really used and I would never use.
Wow.
And when I read the book by Joshua Fields Milburn and Ryan Nicodemus, who started the minimalist movement, they said they put the entire contents of their flat into boxes in the hallway and then measured for a month which items they had to take out to use, like their toothbrush or a cup or a plate. And they said they used about 2% of everything they owned.
Oh, my.
And so, it just really struck me how much we accumulate in our lives. It just weighs us down, and we don't need it. It drains our resources. We need more space for it, which costs more money. And we never, ever really need it. And so there's a deeper reason we're doing all of that, which are probably beyond the time I've got with you now to explain, but for another chat, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be a great thing for us to have another podcast and just talk about the 10 guiding principles.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's next for you now?
Okay, that's a good question.
And I know you're living in the present, but
Yes.
right now, today, what's on the docket for you to do?
Yeah, and it's a great question because I'm still always conscious. Am I living my life true to myself?
Mm-hmm.
And I will be 64 at my next birthday, and the sort of the composition of my life is altering. And I started a relationship nearly a year ago with a lovely new partner, and I'm now feeling I would, from my heart, really like to do a bit more traveling because I've worked really over the last 3 or 4 years just purely on the book and on coaching, etc. So I think in the year ahead, it feels like I'm going to shift slightly to take in some of the world again, because especially with COVID, I did virtually no traveling, as I know many people didn't. And so in the immediate term, I really want to get out, step out again and see a bit of the world with my partner. I'll carry on with my coaching work and my leadership work. I've got an idea on the drawing board for another book, which I'm toying with and looking into, because there's a lot of work to get a book produced. So those are some of the things. And of course, I'm always taking part in learning exercises, because when you're a coach, for me, I find it really valuable to continuously learn new things. And I go into workshops, learning groups, learning circles. So I'm constantly learning, and those things I kind of feel my way into whether I want to take part in them or not.
Perfect. Well, it's time now for me to share my screen. If you've really resonated with what Ray has been talking about and you want to connect with him, I'm going to share his contact information. If you're just listening, you know the drill. You should have been taking notes the whole time with all those great nuggets he's shared. But if not, go run and get a paper pencil. But if you can't, all of this will be on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling. So please subscribe, as well as my findyourleadershipconfidence.com website. So his website is lifewithoutattie.com, and that doesn't have that extra spot there. And his LinkedIn is his name, Coach Ray Martin. I'm going to turn it over to Ray to be able to talk to you about Life Without a Tie, that book, and whatever you can do whenever you go to his website and what he has out on LinkedIn. So Ray, it's all yours.
Okay. Well, the Life Without a Tie website came about because many people who read the book said, we'd love to see some pictures of the journey that you're writing about. And so a lot of pictures of different stages of the journey you'll find on the site, and of course a summary of what the book is about. But it's really just to introduce you to the book. If you're interested, you'll find out quite quickly by looking there if you'd be interested in the story. But I wrote the story to really give the gift of sharing the wisdom and knowledge I gained in that process of change. And so I think there's something of relevance to pretty much everybody in there who's looking to live their life true to themselves. There'll be something in there for you.
Perfect. So again, if you have any interest in learning more, please go to lifewithoutattie.com. Ray, it's just been wonderful chatting with you. You and I are on the same page when it comes to this. I coach leading with the heart, the head, and the hands, and Beautiful. It talks, and that service piece is the hands part. But I think we just really resonate with the same idea of what it is to be a leader.
Yeah, brilliant. Which part? You're in America. Whereabouts in America?
I am in Atlanta area.
Oh, okay.
So Roswell is just a suburb of Atlanta.
So. Yeah. I came to Atlanta once, years and years ago, when I worked.
Oh, it's a little different.
Yeah, for a software company. It would have been in the 90s, like 94, 95, something like that.
Yeah, I had just moved to Atlanta in 86.
Right.
And the last company that I worked for, it was UPS and they came to Atlanta in 91. Yeah. So I spent the last 27 years with them.
Yeah, wow. So this will go out in a few weeks' time, or when does it go up? I just know it.
So again, thank you so much for being an awesome guest. And as always, I remind everyone that life is a journey and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.